Welcome back to Behind the Glass Doors. You probably see we're Mackless today. He's been unwell, so is Mac? Can I say Mackless?
That's great.
Yeah, Mackless.
That's great.
He'll be back with us next week. So just Chris, Mr. Merton, and today we're going to have a bit of a chat. C-squared. We're going to have a bit of a chat about if you're needing a new website, or you haven't got a website, you've got all these other brand assets. Might be logos, might be brochures, might be collateral that are a bit lackluster. But the budget to actually redo everything is not necessarily there. So we're just going to look at taking existing older assets and kind of taking it to a new website. How are we going about that?
Okay, so the biggest thing I think people have trouble with sometimes is that if they have an older logo or an older brand, they don't know what to do with it. And obviously the first step would be to try to do a brand refresh or to try to do something where you're getting a little bit more of a modern look to whatever your logo is. But sometimes clients don't have the resources to be able to do a full...
And it's an expensive exercise, right? You're doing branding suites.
It is.
You might have like vehicles, you might have sales brochures,
100%.
logos, business cards. All that stuff can be expensive.
That's the thing, is the idea that all those things have been stamped across your entire kind of brand suite, and now having to reimagine taking that brand and now changing it across the entire set. What we always say is, I call it kind of like you can do like a trickle effect, right? Which is basically a slow phase out.
Right.
But that's only if you can do like a rebrand, right? But if you can't, what we always say is, all right, somebody comes to us with a logo and it's got like a little bit of bevel and emboss on it or shadow or something like that. And they're like, okay, this is my logo, right? You'd be surprised how good a logo can kind of work in modern atmosphere if you just remove those things. Okay. And I know it seems pretty common sense, but when you take something and you change it back to monochrome, or you just basically remove the shadow, take the bevel and emboss off, you realize that, all right, that could actually work on a website.
So we're not doing the whole thing again. We just a slight little tweak.
We're just looking at it in a more modern way. So sometimes they'll send us a logo and they'll be like, okay, here's my logo. And it's like typography, right? So it's just a font of the name of the company, but it's got a shadow on it, or it's got this little, treatment on it that makes it look like chrome or something like that. By just removing that and making it monochrome, you can take that and knock that out into white and put that onto the website. And that same exact logo, exactly in its same kind of presentation, looks so much more modern. And then you can go forward with your brand. Obviously, you don't have to change all of your logos across your van wraps or anything like that. But your look and feel on the website can start to create that phase out campaign where you start to have a little bit more of a modern look. So you don't have to feel like you can't go forward with anything like a new website or some new marketing if your logo or if your brand is slightly
bit lackluster. Because I guess budgets, especially if you've been around, it might be quite intimidating and quite scary to go all in, because
it's a huge task.
It's bloody expensive. Sorry, can I say bloody on here?
You can say whatever you want.
I just have twice, so hopefully you can. Sorry, Facebook, Meta, and whoever else. It can be quite an expensive exercise, and I think when clients come to me as sales director or the sales consultant, and they have all these assets lined up. So we've got a big job here. It doesn't have to be that big. It can just be about the website with a few tweaks to the other stuff.
And the important thing is that we would just have this conversation before we went live, but the idea is just get started. Get started on something, because in the design process, as you're creating this new website, you can start creating more like extended branding in the website design. So as you're putting the website together, there can be extended branding being created. That's new messaging, new visual graphics, new things to supply the kind of brand voice that we always talk about. But that could be created in that design phase, where then when you have this new website, because you decided not to sit on it and say, okay, I'm only going to get going once I have a new brand. By doing that, you're giving yourself the opportunity to have these new assets being created in that next phase of designing the website and building the website.
And, I think and again, I don't want to get too philosophical. It's Monday morning at about 9:15.
Not enough coffee.
Well too early to get philosophical. But I think in life in general, right, just taking action and not actually say, I'm not going to do this until I get all these ducks in a row. We'll do it, right? And I see it all the time. And even with clients, we get it regularly when they won't take that first step because they haven't got everything else lined up. And I think just doing it and kind of cracking on is a good philosophy to have.
100%. And I agree with the idea too. I'm a big believer of that. I think when you try to be perfect, or you're like, I'm not going to do it until it's perfect, or I'm not going to put it out there until it's perfect. It's like, there is no perfect.
Yeah.
There's just get it done.
Yeah.
There is a way to get it done where it's still a great representation of who you are and what you are.
Yeah.
But it's always the cool thing, I think, about anything now digital. It's always something that evolves.
Yeah.
So just by getting it out there and getting it started, you've now done more than if it just sits in a folder, or if it sits in a notebook and it's like, all right, I'm going to do this this year for sure. I'm going to really get this thing done, right? And then next year comes and you're like, oh, that notebook's still there and I've still got this thing. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get this done. Just start the process, because once you start the process, what that's going to do is that's going to create the opportunity for things to happen.
Yeah.
And then by that one thing happening, that sparks another thing, which will then happen. And then it will spark another thing. So I think
it evolves as you go.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's the key. You just have to not be afraid to get started, because you're going to find that even if you don't feel like you have all the tools ready to go, you still have enough to be able to start that process, which then is going to give you a better look and feel to the market regardless, even if you don't have this kind of completely refreshed kind of look and feel.
From a budget perspective, that get started can be as small as it needs to be, really. Like, it could just be a landing page. It could be a one-page website. It could be whatever it needs to be to fit within a certain budget. And then it can grow over time. Like, as you said, anything you do can evolve. And, whether it's 6 months later, 12 months later, 2 years later, then the full-blown website can come.
Right. And think of it like an organic kind of living thing. It always has the ability to constantly change and adapt. But you can chip away at it as well. So sometimes we'll say, okay, go live with what you currently have. And then because we're trying to create something that has the ability for longevity and to be more robust, you can do this thing where you can kind of like swap out elements or swap out zones or add in zones or create new things that your product or your service is now offering. But if you don't have the thing, if you don't actually have that site out there, you don't have anything to be able to do that with. So people get nervous and they're like, oh no, I want to make sure it's exactly perfect. It can be as close to perfect as you need it to be, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this ideal perfect in your mind of like, just go live with it.
I think as well, there's, what is perfect, really?
Well, it doesn't.
I don't think you ever get perfect doing anything you do.
No.
You get functional, you get it works, but sometimes, all in, make it happen.
Right. And the same thing kind of applies when you're talking about digital marketing, because it's all about paying attention to how people are receiving the material. So if you put a website out live and you're happy with it, and then you start hearing feedback from your customers and like, wow, this is so much easier to use. I can so easy find your product. I can quickly get to your service. I'm happy about this 2 clicks and I'm basically creating a, inquiry. That's going to be great feedback. Or you're going to have, hey, I was trying to find this thing, but I can't figure out how to get there. Like, okay, great. Now we're going to put like a button here, call to action right here, because this is where everybody is having the same issue. They want to find out more information, but they don't have a call to action. Great. Add that call to action and take them to whatever that page is they need to take them to.
I always say to clients when they come to us that, sometimes as good as the team here are, and, lots of agencies have very good teams.
Sure.
There's no secret sauce. We say, right, here's a recipe, should I say, that gets everything happening. Like, we can put the best specialist in, like technical expertise to the project. But there's always going to be an element of trial and error, right? And sometimes but I think what differentiates one agency from another, or one digital marketer from another, is they have the ability to course correct and change tactics. Right, this isn't working as well as we thought and hoped. So let's do this, this, and this. And as long as you're always evolving and creating the campaign, you get it on track, right?
And the important thing to really realize is that you're dealing with people. Always dealing with the user experience, because even as we move forward into the future and all the technology is going to change, we're still dealing with people. And people constantly change. They're never going to be the same all the time. So you have to pay attention to what people are reacting to and what people are kind of doing, where it's like, okay, the user experience is based on whatever that feedback is you're getting from real people. Because you can map everything out as well as you want. Like, you can be like, okay, based on my experience, this is what is going to work. Well, maybe, but you have to also think that this would work at this point, but the audience is changing. So then you have to start looking at the audience and saying, okay, no, they're really reacting to this type of stimuli now. All right, we'll just switch this a little bit and see kind of how this goes.
Yeah.
Knowing that you've already got it to a place where you feel like this is the right direction.
Yeah.
But now that you're paying attention to the audience, you're like, okay. And especially when you're the demographic group, which made it easy when we were doing that Bricktober ad set, because I was the demographic group that I was trying to target. So I was able to kind of take my own experiences and my own kind of interests and be like, ooh, I would find this pretty cool. Yeah. You know, I would click on that. I would go to this event. But that's it. It's really about understanding your audience. And once you understand that audience, then you can go forward with that. That project. Well.
Yeah.
Where are we at? We're at 11th?
We're at 10:22. So, you know, my thing, it's time to call a wrap on Behind the Glass Doors for this week. So, Chris, as always, absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time. Thanks to the 4 people who listen. No, I'm joking. Who listen, and we'll share this across social platforms. Hopefully, we've got Macca back in the chair next week and coughing and spluttering everywhere. And have a great week, people. Make it good.
Take care. Bye.